Hi, everyone. I'm going to read a new one. This isn't an old one that I'm providing new commentary on. I just finished writing this one. So, number 52, Sunday, May 7th, 2023, The Limb Length of AI. Hi, everyone. As artists of every variety panic about the continued development of AI and the threat that further expansion poses to their livelihood and cultural relevance, it's worth asking, how far will AI reach? Its limbs may be stubby now, its fingers lacking dexterity, but what will happen when it hits puberty? Will there be any human domains beyond its reach? In the short term, my lifetime, I think so. Creativity may have been the first party that AI crashed, barging in without an invitation from the residents, i.e., artists, but I suspect it will be the last domain AI will fully replace. Creative expression is too emotional. It inhabits the same intimate sanctuary as parenting and faith, religion, as well as its less obedient nephew, spirituality. And I don't think any of these will relinquish their labors to robots in the coming years. Every episode of The Jetsons was full of predictions about life in 2062. Some of them came true, smartwatches, flat screen TVs, video conferences, but others are antiquated even by today's standards, everything to do with sex, gender, race, and culture. No one has any idea what 2062 will look like, but a reasonable idea of what it won't look like is this. What's for dinner? One parent asks the other. Science meat. Who wants to say grace? R2D2 already took care of that while generating tonight's sustenance. Oh, good. I'm glad that's out of the way. After dinner, have the gold one tuck the kids in for bed. C3PO? Yeah, that one. Have it read Herbert a bedtime story, preferably a newly computed one with lots of simulated emotion in it. I'll have it do one of those I am a real boy stories. Oh, perfect. Oh, and run him through the Temple Grandin human hugger before he gets into his PJs. He seems upset about something. A few mechanized squeezings should take care of it. On it. While I'm doing that, will you get Abigail hooked up to the Robo Breast 3000? The suckle alarm went off about 10 minutes ago, and so on. Unless the goal of parenting is to maximize human suffering and populate the world with sociopaths, I don't think this is where we're headed. In the near future, technological abuse might be the most common reason Child Protective Services gets notified by INGSOC surveillance, but in most families, I think humans will continue to fulfill the bulk of humane tasks, such as faith, literature, painting, songwriting, breeding, and maybe even breastfeeding. Okay, so a little post-journal commentary. When I was growing up, I watched the Jetsons a little bit, like just a few episodes or something, but it was competing. I was born in 1980, and so it was competing against like DuckTales, and it's not going to win that competition. But today, before I sat down to write this, I watched several episodes of the Jetsons to get an idea of what it was that historically people have been predicting that our future would look like. And if anything that makes 1,000 predictions, like there's going to be a couple that come true. I mean, just as a matter of odds. But the rest of them are going to come untrue. And with the Jetsons, just on my short viewing today, I mean, there's like receptionists who sit at typewriters, like old-fashioned typewriters with paper in them. There are automated ashtrays for indoor smoking. And then, most interesting of all, there's like a remarkable lack of influence over culture of anything the internet would have created. So there's like no internet. Now, it takes place in 2062. That's like 40 years in the future. And there's no way the internet as we know it today in its functional form that we would recognize it today is going to continue to be a part of our lives in 40 years. It's already become, or at least it's becoming, this like unusable festering dump of like hostile gibberish and sort of confused. I mean, it's just like it's a weird, kind of terrible thing that is becoming. It hasn't fully arrived, but I have this. I don't know. He's something between a friend and an acquaintance. He's like a friendly acquaintance. His name's Joe. He's a computer programmer, and he's optimistic in that with the wastelandification of the internet, uh, it's going to force people out of their hovels right? Society is going to have to reintegrate into society. Civilization becomes an interactive place again. We go meet our neighbors for the first time, right? Our like fractured empathy begins to mend itself a little bit. So there's a hopeful sort of there's an optimism of what could come. It's just as probable that what's going to replace the internet will be even more isolating. We can't really predict what it's going to be, but it's going to be even like more destructive to emotion and mental health and human compassion and stuff. That could also happen. Nobody has any idea what's coming, but no matter what it is, whatever life is going to look like in the future, I'm pretty confident that there will still be a role for human connection through artistic expression that will be prominently, a part of our lives. Now, that said, it's totally understandable for everyone who feels dread. If you work in music, fine art, if you work in graphic art, doesn't have to be like paintings and stuff. If you work in fiction, if you all of these creative artistic fields, you have probably felt at least a spark of dread, if not a full, like forest fire of it. And that's totally okay. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I'm just about me first. So I've been writing every day of my life for over 20 years, for like, I don't know, 23 years or something. By writing, I don't mean like, oh, in high school and college, I wrote essays. I think that doesn't count for anything. Oh, there's correspondence, I'm writing emails. That counts just as little. Like none of that. I mean, like focused, determined writing where you're doing it with a purpose. That's the kind of writing I've been doing for over 20 years. And like this thing that I wrote today, I have 5,000 pages of these, of things of comparable quality. And I have another 5,000 pages of just needs a little bit more tightening. And I'm getting ready to publish. And then, like, let's say a day comes where it's like, oh, soulless computation is taking care of all this. Don't worry, you don't need to write it. I would feel at least hurt, if not fully devastated. And so I get it for people who have, but like there are people who say like, oh, get over it. Like, okay, that's just what a horrible thing to say to anybody, to visual artists. It's like, oh, just get over it. This is new. It's staying. Like, just reinvent your. Like, that's horrible. Okay, so I used to compete in bodybuilding a long time ago for several years. My wife still competes. You go through this phase for 3 or 4 months of restriction, a pretty extreme restriction. Like not one bite of food for the sake of pleasure. You don't skimp on any workouts, and it's like this strenuous, like Puritanism almost, to get stage ready. The end date's coming, and you got to be ready for this. All you want to do is put down the dumbbell and like take a bite of an apple. That doesn't sound like too much to ask for, but you can't cheat, you can't do it. You got to be stage ready. Now imagine doing that for like 23 years of that level of puritanical devotion to something, life-destroying devotion, just self-sacrifice of a commitment to something. And then it's a week away from the competition, and the judges or the organization or something like that says, okay, no, don't worry, you don't need to compete anymore. It's just robots are only, that's all we're judging this year's robots. That is more than a gut punch, right? That like rips a hole. That's like overturning a religion in terms of how disruptive it is to one's very soul. This singular pursuit that you've sacrificed yourself for decades, and then suddenly it's like, oh, don't worry about it. Like that stings, right? And so I get it for everybody, for every artist, for every musician, every writer who's like harboring dread. I'm there with you, but my spark is sort of muted a little bit, because while there's a prominence of AI in the news, and there's a loud voice of just get over it on like social networking, that's not the majority of people. I think the majority of people harbor that spark. The majority of people have these tender souls. The majority want humane connection, want real compassion, want artistic expression that comes from a human being. And again, we're not the minority, right? And so I'm your audience, you're my audience, and there are tons of us. And I think there will continue to be tons of us at least until 2062. I have no idea beyond that. Nobody has any idea until then, but that's my hopeful prediction, no matter how much wastelandification we see between now and then. So I hope your spark is put to ease a little bit if it was twitching. Okay, have a good rest of life, everyone.